Let's bring in Republican Congressman Mark Green, a veteran who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. He's also a member of the House Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committee. We will jump into that briefing when it begins at the Pentagon, sir, so you'll have to excuse me when we do that. But Congressman,
Sure.
First, just your characterization of these developments and what is happening right now. What do you expect to happen tomorrow?
Well, Sandra, John, thanks for having me on the show. What's the characterization I would have for it is heartbreaking. I mean, this is turning into a horror story. Well, it is Friday the 13th, I guess that makes sense, but it's a horror story for the Afghan people. It's a horror story for the Biden administration. There are there are multiple failures here, but two failures that I think are really important to highlight. You know, how you do a withdrawal is critical. We left Bagram. Our military pulled out of Bagram without even telling the Afghan military. We just disappeared. They felt abandoned, and that abandonment has resulted in them not fight. I mean, they can't trust that America will be there for them, the support that we've promised. So obviously they're not fighting, and that strategic failure, the way we have withdrawn is just horrific. And the intelligence failure. I mean, look at the capability. The Taliban, a synchronized nationwide attack. Our intel guys have failed to let us know the Taliban's capability. And these two failures have long-term ramifications for our country.
I want to talk to you about those. Oh, so go ahead, Trace.
Yeah, I just want a quick question here, Sandra. I just wanted to bring it up because Joey Jones was talking to Sandra the last hour. He made a very good point saying, look, we went to Afghanistan in 2001 to kill the people who killed us. And then we decided it was going to be to build a democracy because that was the best way to keep al-Qaeda from re-entering the country. Well, now we're gone. The Taliban's back in. It looks like the door's wide open for al-Qaeda.
Absolutely. The instability that's going to now happen in this country is a threat to the United States. It's a threat to the people in that region. And that's not necessarily a good place for instability. You've got Pakistan, you've got India, both with nukes. You know, it's right there against China. It's a bad place for instability to be, and it's tragic. You know, I took care of these Afghan soldiers when they were wounded. I've been in that country. I know these people. If they believed America would stand behind them, they'd be fighting. But unfortunately, Biden has shown we're not going to be.
Congressman, as we await this update from the Pentagon, I want to tell you the latest that we are getting from the ground there. This just coming into our newsroom from the Marines there. The first of 3 infantry battalions, 2 Marine Corps, 1 Army, are now in the air heading to Kabul from the pre-staged base in Kuwait. 3,000 Marines and soldiers will be landing at Kabul's international airport in the coming hours, we are told. What is described as fierce fighting now taking place 30 miles outside of Kabul. When asked how soon Kabul could fall, a U.S. defense official told Fox News it could be tomorrow, and then added, or it could be a month. What would the ramifications of that be?
Well, the failure of, the Afghan government, I mean, the complete falling of that and the Taliban taking over, what you're going to have is a group of terrorists. The Taliban is essentially a sadistic version of Islam that thinks that, they can abuse women. They've already killed, UNICEF reported in the last 72 hours, and this was yesterday, so it's probably been added to since, 27 children brutally murdered by the Taliban in these attacks. I mean, these people they have no conscience. They're evil, and now they're going to control an entire state. It's insane. You look, too, at the capacity that's in that country. Heroin, the opiates that are grown there and marketed all over the universe, that's how they're going to make their money. It's a tragic, and it's heartbreaking. I lost friends there, and this is, it's hard to even talk about it or think about it. It's infuriating.
I'd like your take on this as well, because I'm curious when the Pentagon briefing begins here, what they're going to say. That the administration has intimated that they're not really surprised by what's happening on the ground there with the Taliban taking over all this territory. But I want to go back to July 8th, because the president said this, and I'll get your response.
So the question now is, where do they go from here? That the jury is still out. But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
So the administration doesn't act surprised, but, a month ago they said the odds of this happening, highly unlikely. I mean, How do you respond to that, and what do you think the response should be?
So the president is basically saying what he believed to be the case a month ago, which is why I mentioned that this is a huge intelligence failure. Their inability to understand the capability of the Taliban to coordinate these kinds of attacks synchronized across the country is an intel failure. Now, of course, they're going to come out and say this is exactly what was expected because they got to put a spin on this. But the truth of the matter is this surprised them. They were not expecting this. No one in Congress was briefed this was going to happen.
Congressman, I want to bring to you more of that reporting from Fox News, talking to officials on the ground there. While there are no plans to close the U.S. Embassy in Kabul and evacuate all Americans right now, the U.S. military is preparing for that order to be given. Mm-hmm. A former U.S. military official with years of combat time in Afghanistan was more blunt in his assessment and recommended the following: I would pull every American out of Afghanistan and then level the U.S. Embassy. Would you, based on what you know in this moment, do the same?
We have a lot of intelligence information and capabilities that reside in our embassies. Absolutely. They need to get out of there, and they need to get out of there very fast.
But Congressman, what about our allies on the ground? I mean, I'm very curious, and there's clearly a deep level of concern for the interpreters, for the people who helped us for years and years
Sure.
and years. And a lot of those people are still there. And we have compared this to the fall of Saigon, to lifting the helicopters coming out of Saigon, right? And those images were horrific. And I'm wondering, you know, in a day or 2 days or 3 days, when the Taliban is in full control of Kabul and some other cities and areas and territories, what then? What happens to the human rights? What happens? Who goes in and you know, does anything for the people who helped us for all those years?
Well, hopefully they can get all of those people out. I'm sure those people are collapsing into a perimeter around Kabul, and you know, it's hopeful, but hope is not a method. And that's why I've been pushing the president for a plan on how to handle this contingency. We've heard nothing from them. Hopefully we hear something here in a few moments, but there's been no plan to date on how to do this. It basically has disintegrated before their very eyes.
I just want to give a heads up. We're going to confirm this on our own, but we are seeing various reporting that the UN Secretary General will be making a statement on Afghanistan at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Obviously, this is as the Taliban continues to take more and more control. You look at the timing of this, Congressman, and as this was predicted by so many that this would happen with this particular timeline to withdraw all these troops, are you surprised the speed by which this is happening in this moment?
I am very surprised with, you know, the obvious capability of the Taliban. I mean, and I think a lot of people are. This happened much faster. My prediction was weeks. It looks like it's going to happen in days. But no one has been able to really, you know, say that it would go this fast. It's been a surprise to all of us. And again, I go back to that failure of our intelligence community to provide a true and realistic assessment of the Taliban's capabilities. Mm-hmm.